talk about NetApp. It's interesting. I've been to a Cloudfield day in the past where NetApp presented, and topics were less interesting to me than this time. This time there was a couple really kind of key bits which led into like more cloud native and cloud operations topics. So they presented their Spot.io product, specifically the Ocean subproduct on Spot, which was actually really interesting to me because they had an interesting pricing model. I said a new word interesting like 5 times there, but basically you don't pay unless they save you money. And when they say save you money, they are looking at how they can better redistribute their cloud resources across various platforms. I think they support AWS out of the box right now. GCP sounded like it was coming, Azure as well. So that was kind of interesting because it kind of gets down to the cloud economics of how do you redistribute your workloads? How do you get alerted when there are economic kind of forces pushing your bill one way or another? And it was an interesting like dashboard, plus actually had some areas where it could react.
During the Dell presentation, one thing that I really liked and I really enjoyed is I hadn't really done anything with VxRail in a while, and I had a perception that was probably a misconception of what it is today. It has, it has grown and has changed, and it's more flexible. Before, it used to be, it was something that a company would use if they didn't have a real IT and shop. It was more for somebody who needed just to scale rapidly and get out there rapidly. I mean, the big thing about VxRail when it first came out was, instead of having to wait, 90 days to 60 or even 6 months to get something out, you could get it out, in 30 to 45 days, right? Because you could get the hardware on site pretty fast, and you could start doing your work, and it was all prescribed, right? And so it was more of a managed service as well. But the drawback to that was it was inflexible. So a lot of the enterprises I ended up going to where we considered using it, it was inflexible enough to use because of the complexity and the things that we were trying to do with it, right? And so now what excited me was it's more flexible, and it has a lot more features, and there's a lot more things that you can do with it.
I was particularly interested in the first part of that presentation, the documentation and API stuff. Really, it intrigued me in a way that, this is not necessarily something we're used to seeing at a Cloudfield day, but it is a real problem that, companies have, especially VMware as a big company has, but also, all kinds of smaller companies, even non-software companies have, where, people are building software now more and more. They're doing it in-house with their own developers, but then, they don't like to create documentation. And the moment they actually do create documentation, it's outdated again within, the blink of an eye. So VMware, thinking about this at their scale is interesting to me because, at some point this is going to trickle down into something that is maybe even a product, but at least it's going to be, useful for the open source industry as a perspective on, this is how you do documentation, this is how you keep it up to date.
They obviously covered very extensively the offerings that they have currently. In my case, I am slightly biased. I have a long outstanding relationship with not only VMware, but also the earlier days of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, when from the days it was Ravello, and then Oracle bought it and then created OCI out of that. So I was really most interested and biased towards that, obviously, but also because of the reasons that it provides a very unique solution in the sense that if all the other VMware hyperscaler-based platforms don't actually allow you any interactive access to the platform, so like root level access and those kind of things, whereas Oracle VMware's cloud platform actually does allow you to do that. So that's very unique, but also the networking side of things.
The best part about Scaldy's presentation
was not even technical. Yes, they did a great job of sharing how their platform works and helps customers manage data, but the whole discussion about the importance of data sovereignty and solving the issues that are not necessarily technical. There's probably plenty of tools that can accomplish the things that are needed from a data sovereignty perspective, but understanding the importance of it and getting everybody on board from a perspective of all the users, of all the executives, everybody, and even at a governmental level. It was a great discussion. I loved it.
So Veeam has been around for a very long time, and they've been my DR solution of choice when creating BCDR scenarios for my customers, and for a little while after the advent of cloud, but before they really got their traction going with them, it was a little bit of you had to do some machinations to get a good DR solution that was also cost effective, that took advantage of lifecycle policies within the clouds, to the extent that you could do on-prem natively. Now Veeam has a very robust offering with all three clouds, Azure, GCP, and AWS, that takes advantage of the lifecycle policies, making sure that you're getting the most bang for the buck, and you're offloading to the cheaper Glacier type storage, the colder storage that is slower to respond but significantly more of a value for the customer. There's a lot of times people don't think that the backup is, I guess, sexy, but it is truly one of the most important things that you need to do when you're considering a cloud environment or an on-prem data center environment. And I think that they're doing some really good things in this area, and I'll be really excited to see when the V2, V3, and V4 things come out that they had mentioned in the talk.
Man, talk about a company that's been around since the dawn of anything you would have ever considered a cloud, and talking about how they would secure those workloads, and talk quite a bit about zero trust computing, which I found quite interesting, because there's lots of problems like that, especially when you're talking about edge computing, validating and understanding and being able to share workloads, share data, not necessarily the workloads, but share the data between multiple cloud providers, vendors, companies doing the various pieces of analysis. The Intel SGX presentation, I actually was kind of looking for now ways I could use it in some day-to-day projects.
I really liked the Comprise presentation and just the overall state of data management when it comes to cloud native storage these days. And certainly one of the benefits and the cool things that I saw out of the Comprise presentation was just their focus not only on performance really as kind of a key metric, but also their ability to use AI and take that metadata and put it to good use. So certainly the data lake for that storage was a very interesting concept. I still have some concerns and know that some customers might have concerns about the security of that, but certainly it seems like it could be a pretty powerful component that once those security concerns are kind of talked through, that it might be very, very powerful for many organizations.
So when I think about one of the big challenges in the world of Kubernetes, it's providing a solid storage layer as more stateful applications make their way onto the platform. When you were working with stateless applications, you needed storage that was fast, but you didn't care so much about persistence and being able to take snapshots and all that, those kinds of things. And that's shifted, right? The invention of the CSI, the Container Storage Interface, provided a way for different storage systems to start hooking their way into Kubernetes and provide that stateful and additional components like snapshots and replication, make those available in a more native fashion. Storage OS has really built a layer underneath of that to provide really rapid and responsive storage in cluster to Kubernetes resources. So the fact that their solution itself runs in a container and hooks into the subsystem of whatever hardware it's running on and can manage the disks, it can provide replication. It could even provide asynchronous replication to another cluster if that's the sort of thing you need. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there.
Not just to the presentations, but the family. So it's great to get access to these companies, the level of which it's very difficult to get elsewhere, and talk to product managers and leaders in the space, but also the people that come here, the other delegates, are what keep me coming back. I really love interacting with these folks. I love the conversations, and it's really just unequaled in any other event in the industry in my career.
I mean, right now there's a couple of things. So learning about new stuff in a very compacted kind of, forced way where, I don't have to go spending hours and hours finding all of it. It's kind of presented neatly by the company themselves. So, just a lot of content, condensed down to kind of its core. So I don't have to spend as much time all learning new stuff. And then the other part is the delegates themselves, interacting with other people that have an interest in this as well, interacting with the presenters from the presenting companies directly to figure out, okay, this is where stuff does work. This is where maybe, we're telling something that is going to be true in the future, but right now, this is where we're lacking. So, that honesty, that openness, and that access to, a bunch of folks from both the other delegates as well as the vendor side, and, meeting new people and figuring out this whole cloud stuff as we go.
Yeah, so I mean, I love coming to all the field days that I can. The Gestalt IT team is great, and they really put in all the effort so that when you come as a delegate, all you have to do is focus on the technology and what you do. So it's awesome being around so many smart people and people who are really the leaders of their industry, whether it's the other delegates, the vendors, and it's just a great community to be a part of.
For people thinking about joining the Tech Field Day and Cloud Field Day group, it is an amazing social community. It's one of the few Slack organizations and channels I check on a daily basis, because the discussions that are happening between the field days are really interesting. There's stuff just kind of all over the map. I mean, the technologists who are in those rooms, they all have such diverse and varied backgrounds and interests. And we're not all just kind of plain Jane technologists. They've got people into crypto and cars and AV and you name some obscure, watches, cameras. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on in those channels, and I really enjoy kind of peeking in and seeing what other people are interested in, and knowing they're one chat message away from me getting a question answered about those kinds of interests, or sharing my experiences, promoting work I've been doing as well. It's a great community.
The more we are, the better it is, just because the network will be wider. And this is good for us, of course, and this is good for them, because this is one of the way they could have much more people to talk about the stuff they like to do, and on the same professional level, and learn what is out of their comfort zone.
It could be a cheat code to your career if you're looking to expand your professional network in an organic way. This is a great way to do it, but there's more to it than just that. If you're the kind of person who likes to learn about new technologies, if you want to get your finger on the pulse of a particular area, whether that's storage, whether that's networking or AI, there's a field day out there for you that focuses on that type of technology. And it can keep you immersed in what's going in the larger field instead of the narrow focus that you might have working at whatever your day job is. So if you're considering being a delegate, stop considering and go for it.